following is a video presentation created to inform community members about the future of residential farming and promote the efforts of Slow Food Phoenix. Our focal question was, what will residential or small-scale farming and gardening in the Phoenix metro area look like in 2055? Our research client was Slow Food Phoenix, so we'd like to introduce them as an NGO who are based upon 3 principles when it comes to food: good, clean, and fair. They encourage the consumption of local food, they educate youth with school programs, they give farm tours and host special events, and they work to preserve Arizona's traditional heirloom seeds. So in our process of scenario development, we'll start with analyzing 3 trends. Our first trend is social norms around buying food. This deals with things like organic and conventional produce, meat and seasonal preferences, and it deals with how these norms can be influential on which crops are subsidized or focused on for continued growth. Our next trend is population growth. Phoenix's growing population will ultimately stress 2 of the most vital commodities that have historically been hard to produce in the desert: water and food. And this brings us right into our next trend, which is water availability. Agriculture is one of, if not the most water-intensive action that we practice here on Earth today. But when it all comes down to it, scenario development, why is it important? It's important for a multitude of reasons. It helps us assess risk, it engages stakeholders, it creates best and worst case scenarios, and it encourages thinking ahead. So with all this in mind, we can use this information we gathered through trend analysis and local interviewing, and we can begin to develop our scenarios. The easiest way to do this is through developing a matrix. On the 2 axes, we have our drivers: technological development to assist local food production in the desert, and social norms around buying local food. Using these, we can actually create our 4 different scenario stories. So starting with industrial outlasts the local food fad, we can see in this scenario, cheap prices and existing technologies are just too much for the local food fad to overcome, and the industrial food system continues to provide a majority of the population's cheap, subsidized food. In gardening made easy, technology is developed that assists small-scale food production. However, the market demand is low for this type of produce, and there is not a full-scale shift. In real food for the real rich, the markets for residential food increases, however, producing it in Phoenix is difficult, making organic local food an option only for the financially elite. And in shift to local food system, producing food becomes easier for the residential landowner, and the market demand for local food makes it a highly successful and rewarding practice. Our next step, however, is to perform something called a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis takes into account strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's very beneficial because strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization, while opportunity and threats are external. A SWOT analysis is done for each of the scenarios, giving the organization a good sense of how they fare in each scenario. However, the next step is to prepare a plan for the future, and make efforts to try to facilitate the development of the scenario that is favorable to the goals of the organization. For Slow Food Phoenix, this would involve focusing educational efforts and explaining the desert's industrial food system, and make sure that the younger generation truly values these 3 principles that Slow Food stands for: good, clean, and fair. It also deals with increasing research and development for small-scale farming technologies. Another benefit of performing a SWOT is you get indicators of change. Some of these indicators include crop subsidies, food prices, new farming technologies focus, number of local gardens, and local food distribution. I sincerely hope that this video provided a good example of scenario development process and relayed some of the important information regarding the future of residential farming. I'd like to thank all the viewers out there and encourage you to utilize organizations like Slow Food Phoenix and help shape the future that you want.